Now, Auditor-General Tsakani Maluleke says her office's annual probe of the country's 257 municipalities shows no improvement in how they handled their finances. Maluleke found that close relatives of employees and councillors at 68 municipalities across the country scored 201 million rand in tenders. To speak more on the state of South African municipalities, we're joined now by Managing Director and Municipal IQ, Allan. Very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. 201 million rand is a significant amount of money. What's your take?
Hi, and to your viewers. Yeah, it is problematic, but the first thing we should say is that awarding a contract to a family member in a municipality is not actually legal. For me, and I'm sure you would agree with me, this is a bit problematic. And I think the legislation in this particular case, the Municipal Systems Act, should be amended because there's a very clear conflict of interest. I mean, that just seems logical to me. And there's just too much of a risk of corruption in this process. We've seen in many municipalities, you'll have one person as the mayor, and then the mayor's wife, and then the mayor's daughter, and the mayor's son. They all have different contracts which have been awarded. Now, it's very difficult to believe that all those individual family members were the most deserving service provider to get that contract. So the first thing here is I really do think the legislation should be changed and this loophole should be closed so that family members of either councillors or employees in a municipality should not be able to engage in this tender process for contracts and compete, because there really is a very clear conflict of interest. Yeah, and the other thing that should be said is in these 68 municipalities, if you awarded a contract above a small amount, you have to show this. If the contract has been awarded to a family member, it has to be shown in the annual financial statement. And in a third of these municipalities, it wasn't shown. And the issue there is, why wasn't it shown? Why was it hidden? And, you know, there really is a smell of corruption in that.
You say it's not illegal. There are concerns that the money was hidden and didn't appear in the statements. And also there are concerns of nepotism, which have been raised in various quarters across the country with, staff complaining about it. Surely that also is a major problem.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, this is just nepotism. If a family member is awarded a contract and they are not the most deserving candidate in the tender bidding process, then it's nepotism and it's corruption. And you can see the effect that this would have on a municipality, because you have a family member who's not qualified to carry out a contract. Some of these contracts are highly technical. They're things such as building roads or providing water services or sanitation services, things that are awarded to very competent, experienced engineers and engineering companies. And that's why they're outsourced, because they're highly technical, and the municipality, in very many examples, just doesn't have that capacity. Now, to award that to a family member who is not an engineer or not a engineer with specific water and sanitation experience that is just corruption, and it's very clearly nepotism, and this is problematic. And in many of these cases, you would find that because this family member is not qualified and is just been awarded this project and is paid out the money, often the project is either not delivered or it's delivered very poorly. And this is why service delivery is one of very many problems in why service delivery in many municipalities has collapsed.
We also heard throughout the ANC conferences that have been taking place across the country. In fact, the president in Limpopo was speaking about how tender processes are exaggerated in terms of the monies, where they charge more than 10 to 100 times more what should be charged.
Yeah, absolutely. So, once you have corruption, which seeps through the tender process like poison, once you have corruption in that process, then anything can happen. So, you know, at the first stage, the tender, because it's a corrupt process, the tender amount is exaggerated. So, you know, if you take the example of a road, for instance, a road should maybe cost 20 million rand, but because there's corruption in the tender process is lined up, and the contract is worth not 20 million, but say 200 million. And because it's not going to be awarded to someone who's going to build that road, it's going to be awarded in a corrupt way. And then the tender process is basically a sham and is awarded to someone involved in this corrupt scheme who takes 200 million rand, and then you'll often see bribes being paid out to officials or indeed sometimes councillors, you know, in this corruption process. And this is rife in municipalities. I mean, we saw this week the Hawks swooped on 15 municipalities in the Free State to go and arrest people and investigate issues of corruption. That's just this week, 15 municipalities in the Free State. I mean, it really is shocking.
Yeah, absolutely. And also it seems that, you know, there's no concern for the actual municipality in terms of improving services because of the number of service delivery protests we've seen across the country.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a really important point. So when you have corruption and when you have all these nefarious activities, the person who loses most is the resident on the ground. So you will find that poverty has got worse, much worse, over a period of time in many municipalities in South Africa. Those municipalities that are on the point of collapse, where basically nothing happens, and there are very, very many of them. The National Treasury says that 2/3 of municipalities have significant financial issues. They're not carrying out their financial function properly, and the National Treasury, the departing Director-General, commented 2 weeks ago that National Treasury can no longer cope. This week, the Director of Prosecutions at the NPA said the NPA is overwhelmed by cases of corruption in local government. It's shocking. It really is shocking. And, you know, ultimately, you know, we have to ask what is happening here. We have to ask who is in charge. We have to ask where leadership is. You know, when 15 municipalities in the Free State are being investigated for corruption by the Hawks, we have to ask what the MEC of Cooperative Governance is doing in the Free State. Where is that person? Why are 15 municipalities being investigated for corruption under the MEC's watch? And really, to me, ultimately, it points to a failure in leadership, both at a national and a provincial level. And the Auditor-General is very clear on this in her report as well. She points to really disappointing leadership over not only the last year, but she also made a number of statements about the last electoral term, the last 5-year term of councillors in local government before our elections took place in November. And she concluded there, very interestingly, that municipalities were in a worse off state at the end of the term of councillors than those municipalities were at the beginning of that term, which is really depressing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for weighing in on this discussion.